Views Not Ratings back once again, checking out a release that caught our attention that's out today. Megafaun, their self-titled release, which incidentally isn't their debut, out on Home Tapes Records. So I better do the obligatory backstory, just in case you haven't already heard this for the umpteenth time. So the guys who now comprise Megafaun, Phil Cook and Brad Cook, along with another dude, Joe Westerlund, formed a band with some guy in the late 90s. The band was called the DeArmond Edison. Anyway, they broke up in 06, and the one guy went off to make an album in a cabin, while the other three dudes stayed in North Carolina and formed Megafaun. Now, I could easily get in a tangent about that the other guy, but I'm not. In fact, I'm not even going to tag this with his name. So eat it, other guy, whose pictures are on our Flickr page and who I saw live last month. Okay, so Megafaun has put out 3 albums in the past, 2 EP and 1 full length. The first EP was basically a stripped down kind of affair in my opinion, really seeming exactly like a bunch of guys who'd been broken off from a good thing, didn't know if they should go all instrumental or into experimental music or into folk or what. The next album they decided they're going to be a folk band, mixed with some experimental guitar and electronic action, thus Pitchfork gave them the Freak Folk label. And the last EP, they really went full bore ahead with the folk. Did that memorable 13-minute instrumental with a long title where they even delved into jazz. So you gotta wonder, what next? This is their 4th release and they finally felt comfortable enough to use a self-titled thing. I have to say it's a very solid effort by the boys here. One thing I kept noticing throughout the album was that in places, it felt like they took it back to the DeArmond Edison days. That band really had a sort of REM-ish vibe to it. Just as with DeArmond Edison, Megafaun has decided to reintroduce a bit of piano to its sound, but all that is equally balanced out by a lot of guitar noodling and experimentation, something that's actually been their hallmark since they came into existence. They've also brought in a lot of other instruments, keeping with the theme of the last record, where they continue to mess with horns, but are also throwing in violins now. Phil Cook, the vocalist, also appears to have finally broken through with confidence in his voice, getting over what I can only guess might have been some insecurity of having to live in the shadow of that other guy we talked about earlier. They also have a few guest vocalists show up and add a nice twist to a few songs. Sometimes they threaten to go into roots band territory, but then you hear something crazy, like the extremely and abnormally loud screech of a guitar, and you relax, knowing you're right at home. In one track, Serene Return, you literally hear for about 2 minutes 5 seconds a cacophony of a whole different bunch of sounds, ranging from electronic to banjo. And I'd say that one track really sums up this album in a good way. The band throws up a bunch of shit from their past, from their extreme past, and sees if it sticks. The good news? Yes, it does. We can only hope more bands continue to not play it safe like these guys and make experimental masterpieces like this in the future. Check this album out, and on a side note, we do hope to see a proper reunion tour from DeArmond Edison, specifically these guys and that other guy, not just one-off appearance.